Hi, welcome to DrumWise Meets. Today I'm with a drummer who's worked with the likes of Chasing Status, Jeff Beck, The Bays, Massive Attack, The Imagine Village and The Spice Girls. This is DrumWise Meets Andy Gangadeen. Hi Andy.
How's it going, Tom?
So my first question for you today, what age did you get into drums? And when you first started playing, what bands or artists inspired you?
Yeah, I sort of knew at the age of 7 that I wanted to be a drummer, but it wasn't till I was 17 that I actually started having lessons with the amazing Bob Armstrong, and studied with him for 5 years. And I simply wouldn't have had the career that I've had if it wasn't for Bob and Bob's teachings. He was such a beautiful man and an incredible teacher. And we the bands I was listening to back then, I was growing up as a youngster with quite a lot of older brothers and sisters, so in the 70s. So they were playing me things like Dark Side of the Moon and Deep Purple, Led Zepp. So that was my sort of intro into music. And then I discovered I watched I've just happened to switch on the TV one day. I must have been about 12 at the time, and there was a series with that Oscar Peterson was doing, and it was this music called jazz, and I didn't even know what jazz was, sort of thing. And it was, and then once I got into that, I just started my listening sort of shifted that way, sort of thing. So, and I used to listen to a great show on Radio 1 called Sounds of Jazz with Peter Clayton, which was on every Sunday. And could pick up loads of really good, interesting stuff to listen to, sort of thing. Yeah,
excellent. And when you first started, what was your first drum kit?
I had a Pearl Maxwin kit, which I bought from Supreme Drums in Walthamstow, because that's where I'm from. And it was that was a weird story. Going back to why the reason why I didn't take drumming up as a career or started studying it was because my dad didn't want me to play drums, basically. So basically, when I bought the kit when I was 17, when I started to go to Bob, I hid it in the cupboard, and when we go, I'd get the kit out and play, and then would pack it away. And this went on for about 6 months before he twigged what was going on, sort of thing. But that was the story of my Pearl Maxwin kit.
Oh wow, awesome! And do you still have it?
No, I exchanged it for a Pearl. I think it was a Pearl export kit, and but I have fond memories of that Maxwin kit. I actually bought some because it was a terrible color, and I actually rewrapped it with this equally bad sort of terrible blue vinyl thing, which looked as hideous. But anyway.
Well, so it might still be out there if anyone's.
It might do, yeah.
This Pearl kit with this terrible blue wrap. It's Andy's old kit.
Yeah.
And talk us through your current equipment choice, your current setup.
Yeah, well, I've just joined Natal Drums, and who make some brilliant drums at the moment. I think it's 22. I've got 22 by 16, an 8, a 10, 14 and 16 floors, floor toms. I'm so not a drum geek, I just I've got I'm a great believer in the sound of is always in your head and in your hands and how you actually play, sort of thing. So I can I like to play on other people's kits and just try and get my sound across in other people's equipment, sort of thing, because it's drums these days, they're all made to such a really good, high standard now. Even the really lower range stuff sounds really good, sort of thing. So so I mean, I just think that yeah, I'm not one of those people that you know dwells about the sort of, you know, what choice of bass drum pedals to use. I mean, I was kind of a bit of a drum geek, but I'm a geek in another way with sort of electronics and stuff like that. That's where my sort of that's what I get excited about, but not so much the actual drums itself. Even though I know it's important to. I mean, I'm blessed really because I've always, you know, had amazing endorsement deals like with Zildjian and Vic Firth sort of thing, and obviously with the town now. Yeah, I mean, so I've had a lot of stuff over the time, but yeah, I mean, it's I think you can sort of not get hung up about it, but so I overthink the whole you know whatever drums you're using or choice cymbals. It's pretty much it's all in your hands and in your head, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And while we're talking about equipment,
Yeah.
can you talk to us a bit about your Spice Girls setup? Because I think that's kind of become quite a legendary like setup, you know, with with the rack and you know. So here you go, Tom. Insert video here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, talk to us about that kit because I mean it just looks awesome.
Yeah, well, I made that rig itself. It's called I called it the Gangascope because looks a bit like a gyroscope sort of thing. And yeah, I was around about the sort of early 90s. I was like trying to think of what to have some sort of way of just getting a look about, you know, or just having something which would instantly be recognizable sort of thing. So every time they saw that kit, they knew it was me sort of thing. And it just came to me one night. I just woke up in the middle of the night and I came into this studio here, and I got 3 10-inch drum hoops, and I cut the heads off of them. So just left the hoops, and I put one on the. I went upstairs on the kitchen table, put one on the floor, and one doing that way, and one doing that way. And went back to bed. And I woke up in the morning and I thought that's it, sort of thing. And then I just went all out to try and to build it, sort of thing. So
awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's good. It's good to, you know, to have an ident, because it just makes it just, I don't know. It's I think obviously you've got to sound really good, and you've got to have all those attributes as well. But if you can also time with that a look about what it is you're doing, then I think that it does give you a more sort of it builds your brand basically, as in for want of a better sort of a better phrase.
Cool.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about equipment and things, something that's just come to me actually, which I think might be good to ask you. So in the days of the Spice Girls, technology-wise, how is that different to what you do now with Chase and Status? You know, I imagine there are some very big differences.
Yeah, massively, Tom. Going back to what I was saying earlier, that I was really into electronics because I actually studied electronics at a college in Walthamstow, and so I've always been into that side of things. And when I heard Dave Weckl play with the electric band at Ronnie Scott's, he was obviously an immense player, but then he had a rack of electronics that he was using, was triggering all these incredible stuff, you know. And once I saw that, I just thought that was it. I thought, well, I've got to try and incorporate electronics into my drum setup. And I was buying. I mean, I was buying stuff which didn't have MIDI on it, sort of thing, like a Mark MX1 trigger unit, which I then fired into a Simmons SDS5, and then I linked it to a sequential tom drum machine. So it was, but it was like, you know, and when you know, but it took me ages and just to amount that amount of stuff, because obviously, you know, I couldn't afford to buy the thing in one go, and there wasn't the idea of someone would want to have this equipment to trigger drum sounds was live. I think that wasn't really, there was nothing out there, so it was just trying to fit in these different components and just hooking them all together to try and make this thing work. But by the time I got the Lisa Stansfield gig, which was in 1990, I had a rack of gear which was the size of like a fridge freezer sort of thing, and it had two, and on it I had to run two Akai S950 samplers, and the sample time in those things was like sort of like 26 seconds or something. So and the reason why I had to have two was because mid-set the tech would have to load. I would switch down from the one machine to the second machine, and he would load the first machine with floppy disks to put in the next bunch of sounds. I mean, it was crazy, sort of, just being able to trigger like 808s or 909 sounds, which they used on the album, sort of thing. That you'd need that amount of stuff to do it, sort of thing. I mean, now I can buy a TM2, which is like you can put in your pocket,
yeah,
and do exactly what I was doing there, and it's way more efficient. It sounds loads better, but that just goes to show from 1990 to where we are now, how much drum companies have sort of like taken on board the benefits of having electronics, and obviously, even if it wasn't to use it just to trigger electronic sounds, but the way they've developed so now they're now going for more obviously more acoustic sounds, but you can sit there with headphones on, practice till whenever, sort of thing, and that's it. That just being able to do that is a phenomenal thing to have it in your facility, sort of thing.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. And obviously, now these days with all the Roland gear and stuff for just triggering samples and stuff.
I mean, Roland especially. I mean, I think they're the only drum company that's actually that's done good business over this lockdown thing, because it's and it's great what they're doing in terms of advancing the integration of electronic drums and acoustic drums, and this term hybrid, which I mean which I'm glad that there's actually a term for it now, because there simply wasn't. But I think it's a good acknowledgement of like looking at drumming, but in two different ways, because I always treat playing the acoustic thing as one thing, and playing electronics as completely another, and it's pretty much set up that way, the way I've got it laid out, because the approach is completely different, and the way I play an acoustic kit is completely different to how I approach electronics, sort of thing. And I like. I think it's good to make that distinction, so it never sort of, you can keep things quite sort of. It just makes it. What's the right word? It just creates a good. It compartmentalizes, but both things really well.
I often say to students that, because when they say, "Oh, what's the difference between the electric kit here and over the other side I've got an acoustic kit," and I will just generally say, well, it's very similar to playing an electric guitar and an acoustic guitar. They're the same instrument, but they have some really big differences, and it's
that's the perfect analogy, Tom. I'm going to use that one, because
there you are. So, you get it all here at DrumWise, Andy.
No, but it really is, because yes, you're playing 6 strings, but the approach on acoustic is incredibly. It couldn't be worlds apart to playing the 6-string electric, sort of thing. But they're both guitars, and they're both. But it's just that thing is the technique on both of those things is completely different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, my next question for you today is, and this might be a bit of a tough one for you. If you had to pick just one, who would be your all-time favorite drummer?
That's I've watched a number of your DrumWise interviews, and I actually think what you're doing is brilliant work, Tom. I've just got to say that now. So, and it always comes up with this question, and and everyone like has to quote loads of people. And yeah, yes, it's an impossible question to answer. So I've thought about this, but yeah, if there's one person I would define as, you know, all time all round drummer, and that would be Vinny Colaiuta, because from very early on, once I started once I was checking him out, I just like he's for me he's got everything. His feel is unbelievable. His sound is immense, and yet he's got this incredible facility as well. So he's just got all bases covered. But when he plays, he's just so musical with it. You know, you never get a sense that, you know, he's got all this stuff, you know, in his armory, but he's never bombastic. He just always plays in keeping with the music, and he's and you know, I saw him play with Herbie a couple of years back, and you know, he's got, you know, they were playing things like Actual Proof, which is, you know, a proper, you know, that's a proper out there tune in terms of the form of it, and he was really sort of taking it out. And then you'll play something like Chameleon, which Hobby Mason played on, and just stick on that groove, and does both things incredibly well. That's why I'm a huge fan.
Who wouldn't be?
Exactly.
So, from one hard question to possibly another one. What's been the highlight of your career so far? And I mean, also, just to follow that up, obviously you have done some incredible things in your career, you know, from the time of like Spice Girls, who probably at the time were like the biggest music act in the entire world, you know? So what are your highlights?
Yeah, that was, it was funny because I'm not sort of not being big-headed, but the thing is, I knew I was going to get the call to do that gig because it was just right. It was the right time, and I'd come off the back of doing some, you know, some gigs where I was cooperating electronics and the Massive Attack thing I was doing at the time. And then that gig came up, and I had to make a choice whether to stick with Massive Attack or do the Spice Girls, and I decided to do Spice Girls, and Massive Attack have never spoken to me since. But that's that's the price you pay, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I've, as you said, I've had the privilege to play with immense people. You know, Jeff Beck, Herbie Hancock, you know, some incredible bands, sort of thing. But the one guy who was who was really amazing to work with was this guy called Martin Carthy, who's an English folk guitarist and singer, and he's proper folk royalty basically. And I knew nothing about English folk music, and I was involved in a project called the Imagine Village, and you know, and he was just to work alongside him and his daughter Eliza and all the other brilliant people in that project was just incredible. And I didn't understand what you know. I mean, drumming in folk music doesn't really have a part. I mean, not unless you're Dave Mattox and you've played on, you know, Legion Leaf, which is a phenomenal, you know, folk album, and he sounds amazing on it. But what it was understanding songs and the narrative of the song, and then you know, the drums are really sort of low key and quite sympathetic to what's going on. But yeah, working with him was just it just opened up a whole world of a different understanding, which I've never been. I don't be used to. I think being a session musician, you know, it's such a great you just get access to such if you're, you know, if you're versatile enough and you're on for the challenge, it does open up a whole world of people's, you know, understanding of music and you just get thrown into loads of different sort of you know, scenarios, and meeting people from completely different backgrounds and you know, musical backgrounds, and you take all of that in, and it's if I was just a drummer in you know, in one band and made a career of that I guess that would be good, but it wouldn't be as fulfilling for me than having the opportunity to work with many different people and just absorbing what, you know, their, you know, the stories and the knowledge and how they approach things, because it kind of, you know, you come out the other end of it, you think, oh yeah, and you take what you want from any situation, and then it molds you into the person that I am now, sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So from highlights to maybe not so not so good things.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anything go wrong on stage, whether it be gear fails or brain fails, that you can tell us about?
In the early days when I was putting together this rack, which was inspired by Dave Weckl, when um, I am and I was I made I built a part of it because what I was finding was that the triggers wasn't responding as well. So I built this little game structure thing, um, and um, I was doing this gig with this woman called Basha, who used to be singing with Matt Bianco, and she had a lot of success in America, sort of thing, and it was an amazing gig to do. But this was back in sort of 87, 88, and I basically I crowbarred the notion of using electronics on their gig, which I know they were dead against, So anyway, so we're sort of mid tour in America, and she does this ballad where the whole band goes off stage, and in this ballad, my snare drum just decides to trigger itself, and just goes off on one. It sounded like an Aphex Twin remix, and they and then after that they said, right, no more electronics. So they banned the whole thing. So that was it was a tough one, but yeah, but you learn from these situations, sort of thing.
Oh, I suppose that's the thing when you start to bring electronics into the mix. There's even more that can go wrong.
I know. I mean, like, gosh, I mean, I did this Freddie G drum camp thing the other day, which was a great thing to do. I mean, and a big fan of George Frederick, who's hosts this event, and yeah, and it was like, I turned up with some like my own PA, like mixing desk, and Craig Van Bell and Steve, I just turned up with a pair of sticks, and and obviously some stuff. I just thought, but I mean, there's like if I'd have left one lead, one crucial lead in it, I mean, the whole thing would be over, So it's just so many things you just got to be. Because I think, God, why am I doing that? I would just love to turn up with a pair of sticks and just sit behind the kit and just play, but I don't know why I put myself through this torture all the time, but I must somehow, I must enjoy it in some sort of sadistic manner. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andy, I mean, if that's the case, you chose the wrong instrument. You should have just played like the flute. It's a lot easier to carry.
I know. I just think, I think I like to just to make things way more complicated than what they really are. I mean, going back to that Spice Girls gig, I mean, it was, I deliberately made it really impossible, but I made it so that it would be a challenge every night, sort of thing. So I was triggering like vocal samples and triggering that all totally unnecessary, because it could have all gone on playback. But I decided, no, I want to sort of like want to do it because it will keep me on my toes, sort of thing. And and I think we did about 96 shows with that, and I don't think I played it perfect once, but that was a good thing for me, because it meant I just had to keep trying to, it just kept me on my toes all the time, sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So my next question is, when you first get a gig with a new artist, how do you learn the material?
I've got quite a good memory, Tom. But what I always do, I'll listen to the track. I'll make notes out, and then once I've made the notes, I can pretty much remember it. Just and then I don't have to look at it, but I physically need to write it down first, and then it kind of goes in, sort of thing. Yeah, and that's, it's not. I mean, I'm not a great reader by any stretch of the imagination, and I think I think there's a lot of emphasis that's put on reading as such, and obviously it is really important. But I think that drum notation especially it's not you can't. It's not very accurate. You can't notate feel, for example, on with the current notation that we all use, sort of thing. And it's so all you end up doing is you see these dots, and you kind of have to you either just read it verbatim, and if you was to write that a hip hop beat down or a reggae beat down and read it verbatim, it wouldn't make any sense, sort of thing, because you couldn't get the nuance between the different sort of shuffles that you'd need to have on the hat or whatever, or the kicks being slightly late or the snares being slightly early, whatever sort of thing. So that's why notation in its current form is it's not it's it's just not it's just not it's just it isn't accurate enough, basically. So
I know what you mean, and I often say to students when they're reading the chart, reading the drum music, I say you've got to. It sounds a bit clinical because they're reading it. They're not thinking about what they're hearing and feeling. So there's definitely something to be said for. I mean, obviously it has its place, of course it does.
It does, yeah.
But it's not everything.
It's not everything, no, and that's why I think it should be learned orally, so that basically you should memorize the form, you should know what parts are going where, but then just listen and then play it, sort of thing. That's the best way to interpret it, sort of thing. So
excellent.
Yeah.
So now on to my couple of curveball questions for you.
Yes.
And the first one of those is, what are your hobbies away from drums?
I don't have any hobbies as such, Tom. I just love just doing music, whether it's music production, music writing. I like making electronic stuff. I just do it all the time, basically. I don't have a partner, I don't have a girlfriend, and there's a reason for that. Is because I just spend the whole time just doing music, sort of thing. But I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way, basically. So, and I should find a hobby. I should try and do something to but I don't. I've yet to find what that thing is.
But you know what? I think your answer there is a perfect answer, because the whole point of when I wrote that question, I was thinking to myself, well, drums started as a hobby for me, and they have become my career. Yes. Obviously, for me, it's teaching and playing. But whether it be all the things you just said, anything to do with music, whether it's the electronics side of things, whether it's running a studio, sorting out stem tracks for people, it 100%. Can still, even if it pays our bills, it can still be something that we love doing, and therefore it can be our job and a hobby. So 100%, you do have a hobby, but it just happens to be your job.
I couldn't have put it better myself, Tom. I mean, yes, I should be interviewing you, mate.
So actually, let's do that question again. Andy, what's your hobby? The answer is music.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, no, I mean that is I mean, look, people look at this interview thinking, oh, what a boring git, I still get really excited about taking on new projects, or this I'm working with this new project at the moment. As last couple of days have been absolutely manic because they're doing Reading and Leeds this weekend, and so getting all the stems together for that and making it sound really banging, sort of thing. It's been like 48 hours of intense work, but I love it because I know that I can bring something to that show, and it's gonna go off, sort of thing. There's nothing more exciting than that.
It's far better doing something that you love doing rather than a 9-to-5 job sitting in an office. No offense to insurance sales or whatever, but selling insurance, it's not. I wouldn't want to do that. So no. So my next curveball question for you today, Andy, and you know what this question is going to be because I know you've seen some of the other interviews with people like Ollie Wiseman, and we've had a real laugh on this question. What's your favourite biscuit?
My favourite biscuit is malted milk. And malted milk with a good old dunk in a nice coffee, not tea, is a winner.
Okay. So there you go. You've given me all of the answers. Boom. So you're a dunker. Yeah. Nice. Someone said to me recently that such thing exists as a milk chocolate malted milk.
Oh, there is. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't. Yeah. I have tried it. There's too many. There's too many flavors going on. I think just a malted on its own, good texture. good consistency, and the right amount of bite on it.
Yeah.
Yes, the one. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my last question for you today, Andy, if you could give just one piece of advice to your younger self when you first started playing, or when you first started taking drums seriously, what would that advice be?
Well, there'll be a few things I would suggest. I mean, the first couple are fairly obvious, and that is, got to work really hard, putting on a lot of hours. Things, you might get to a point where you think that nothing's happening, you might want to give up, but it's persistence which I mean, the people that get that top tier is people that they just keep going, sort of thing. So I think that's an important, but I think it's also important just to just stay true to your beliefs and why you're doing it. I mean, I remember quite early on in my career now, I was making quite tough decisions, and I was being quite hardcore about stuff. And consequently, I gained a lot of respect for that sort of thing. People would challenge me, say, well, well, if you don't do it for this money, then we'll get someone else. I said, well, fine, we'll get someone else. And even I needed the money. I just thought, no, I'm not going to compromise myself like that. I know what I'm worth, and I know what I can bring to this. And yeah, if you want to get someone who can do it cheaper, then that's fine. But I'm not going to compromise what I do. And I was I don't know why, because I'm not I'm not like a really super confident person, but when it came to negotiating what I'm worth, I was always like, no, I know how much work it's taken me to get to this point, sort of thing. So I'm not going to undervalue myself. So yeah,
that's an important lesson, definitely. So Andy, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
It's been amazing, Tom, and I've got to say, what you're doing is brilliant for the drumming community, and I just hope you can continue and just bring a lot of this drumming community is a really special bunch of people. So it's brilliant what you're doing.
Thanks, Andy.